Gabe, I want to ask you about the media piece of this. Here's Caroline Leavitt complaining about the coverage of the president's peace efforts. This is number 5, please.
One thing that has absolutely not changed is the media's negative and downright false coverage of President Trump and his foreign policy accomplishments. From the beginning of this entire process, much of the left-wing media has been actively rooting against the President of the United States in the pursuit of peace. Initially, the media ridiculously claimed that President Trump was somehow beholden to Russia for even agreeing to have a face-to-face discussion with President Putin inside of the United States. The media said President Trump was making a grave mistake by, quote, legitimizing Putin. They were aghast that President Trump would treat another world leader like a world leader. The media relentlessly attacked President Trump and claimed he suffered a, quote, major defeat for not immediately emerging with a final agreement, even though he said heading into that meeting, this was a meeting to listen and to understand how to move the ball forward. All weekend following those historic U.S.-Russia bilateral talks, we listened to clueless pundits on television trying but failing to claim that the president had failed. The so-called experts in the foreign policy establishment, whose record is nothing but endless wars, trillions of wasted taxpayer dollars, and dead Americans, have the nerve to try and lecture President Trump, who has solved 7 global conflicts in 7 months, about peace. This is the same president, by the way, who brokered the Abraham Accords in his first term, on top of more than half a dozen other peace deals this year alone, as I just said. We also saw yesterday the president of Ukraine and all of the other major leaders of Europe fly.
Gabe, how would you rate the coverage of this whole process so far? Do you think it's been appropriately balanced, or as Caroline argues, and I would agree, it's been pretty negative about the president's efforts, expecting him, as she said, to get a peace deal in a day?
Yeah. I mean, it seems generally I'd agree with you. I think that it's sort of been pretty antagonistic, and that tracks a lot of the reporting for a long time about like Trump and Putin, and I think their purported relationship that's extended beyond, I think, what reality has illustrated as far as 2016 and whatnot. But I think, Mark, I was kind of curious as far Marc Caputo, as far as that, if you think that illustrates like from an instinct basis, like, do you think Caroline is, I don't know, do you think that that's just another example of the White House going after media the way they do on every issue? Or did you think that how Caroline responded to that question, like it was particularly long, her response there? And I guess I wondered if you think that that is indicative of like, they care particularly how people perceive what the White House thinks about this?
Great question. So, Mark, is there special juice on this one?
It's a little bit of both, because the White House, I can tell you, was pissed off at the coverage on Friday. I don't want to say the name of the reporter, but there's a certain TV reporter who came out and set the tone. I don't know if that reporter, and I'm not going to mention gender, had called it a failure, but when you watch that and you watch the tenor of a lot of the television reporting about it, you would have thought like, wow, the bottom dropped out. Now, that said, Donald Trump, and to a degree everybody else in the press shop, bears some blame for that, because Trump was the one who put out the ceasefire idea, and he said, if I don't get a ceasefire, I'm not going to be happy. He comes out, he doesn't have a ceasefire, and then Trump, whom everyone is used to being garrulous, voluble, talkative, doesn't have a Q&A. So it looked to a lot of the people in that room, and then more broadly on social media, where lots of ideas can quickly become conventional wisdom, that it was a failure.
Yeah, perfectly said. And there are lots of reasons that contributed to it, including just superficiality and hostility to Trump. I'll tell you another mistake they made, and this is obvious, and you both, I'm sure, have thought it, and lots of you have. You ask reporters to fly to Anchorage, then you don't have a press conference, even though you say you're going to have one, and then you do an interview with Hannity, right? You give an exclusive to Hannity, which I thought was a mistake. And I think just in general, like, you shouldn't be doing national security stuff.
Hannity didn't even ask about a ceasefire. The word ceasefire never came out of Hannity's mouth. So you can understand it was like a massage. You know what I mean? It was like a gimmick, right?
It was not good press management. But as always, they get some hits.
Want more great clips like that? I've got an idea. Hit the subscribe button, be part of the two-way community, never miss a clip,
And you can always watch our full episodes, join them live, go to twoway.tv.